Welcome back to the Disturbed Chronicles. My name's Cams, and I'm glad you're here because today's video we're going to talk about Tamla Horsford, a 40-year-old mother of 5 that mysteriously died in Georgia back in 2018. So how did Tamla die? Well, Tamla and her husband, Leander, moved to Cumming, Georgia for a job opportunity for her husband, Leander. And Tamla was a stay-at-home mom, and she was an amazing mother. She was great to her 5 boys, always attending all of their sporting events. Tamla was their biggest fan. And Forsyth County is where they were residing. And something important to mention here is that county in Georgia used to be predominantly white. And this is a black family that we're talking about. Forsyth County is known for its racism, and until this day it still has its issues, although it's a lot more diverse than it used to be. I currently live near this area in Georgia, and I've heard my fair share of stories. But regardless, Tamla and her husband were doing good in life, and on November 3rd, 2018, on a Saturday night, Tamla was invited to a local football mom's house for a slumber party, and there was going to be a bunch of other football moms also attending, and Tamla didn't know Jean that well, who was hosting the party, and I've heard her name pronounced several different ways, so I'm just going to go with Jean and hope that that's correct. If not, my apologies. All of these women were mothers of the boys that were on the football team. And her husband even said in an interview that Tamla wasn't too excited about going to this party, but being the kind-hearted woman she was, Tamla decided to go anyways. She was a little late after cooking dinner for her family, but Tamla drove herself to this party. She was going to stay the night because most of these women were planning on drinking, and it was supposed to be like an all-girls sleepover. And Tamla arrives at the party just a little late. There's about 7 other women there, including Tamla would be 8. Jose Barrera was actually downstairs in the basement with a friend watching the football game separately. Tamla brought a bottle of liquor with her, and she had recently taken a trip to Mexico, which is where she acquired this liquor, so it was probably some really good tequila, but nobody really wanted any of it. Jean said that she didn't really like the tequila like that, so I'm personally not a huge tequila person myself, but if someone came to an event that I was hosting and they brought a gift, I would be very thankful, but that wasn't really the case here. But that does show you the kind of person that Tamla was. She was very thoughtful and considerate of other people. So Tamla ended up drinking the tequila herself, and the host Jean cooked dinner for everybody, and they all watched this football game together. Tamla did smoke cigarettes, and she periodically stepped outside to smoke, and one of the other women at the party actually brought some marijuana, and she was outside smoking it, and Tamla evidently hit this as well. But the host Jean wasn't too happy about this. This is because her partner Jose was actually a court officer for Forsyth County, so she didn't want any illegal activities going on at her home, which is understandable, so she asked them to put it out. And they did. Shortly after all of this, Tamla checks in with her husband, say hi and tell her children good night. Tamla's husband stated that she seemed like she was in a really good mood, even though she wasn't too excited about going to the party. She was actually enjoying herself. She was having a good time. And some of these women actually decided not to spend the night, and they had their husbands pick them up, or someone picked them up from the party. And at some point in time, Tamla explains that she would rather go home instead of spending the night. She lived close by and she thought she could just drive herself home, but she was talked into staying the night because she had already been drinking. Now, I want to mention that they were actually watching the LSU football game that night, and it was against Alabama, and it was a huge blowout. Alabama was, I think, 29, and LSU was at 0. The host of the party, Jean, she was a huge fan of LSU, and I don't know if you guys are sports fans or not, but people tend to get kind of emotional about these football games. Plus, they're drinking Fireball, alcohol and tequila. So I feel like that's something important to mention here. They end up actually just turning this game off. A few women had already left because they had to relieve their babysitters, and the remaining people that were at the party actually played a card game called Cards Against Humanity. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this game or maybe even played it. It's a very fun game to play, especially when you're drinking. They play this for about an hour or so, and then a few of the people actually start cleaning up and, getting ready for bed because it's getting late. But Tamla didn't want the party to end. She was trying to get people to stay up with her and hang out. Tamla had a lot of energy, she had 5 children. So they actually have a timestamp here from their security system, and it basically just shows the times that people were actually leaving that night. They are in military time, but the first one is 10:30 p.m. So Bridget is about to have her partner pick her up from the party, and Tamla wants to go smoke a cigarette. So Bridget and Tamla hang out for a few minutes before she gets picked up, and as Bridget goes to leave, Tamla walks her out, and she is the last known person to see Tamla alive. You can see her story lines up with what's documented on the timestamp. But if you notice at 1:57 a.m., the back door is opened and it never closes, or at least it's not documented of it being closed. Madeline, who is Jean's aunt and also stays in the home, came downstairs, and this is the next morning around 8:45 a.m., and she finds Tamla, who is lying face down in the backyard, still in her pajamas. Madeline stated that Tamla had her arms planked down by her side and she was just laying there flat. I don't know why Madeline decided to immediately pray after she saw Tamla before alerting anybody or going to check on her. I guess everybody handles these things in their own way. She then goes upstairs and she alerts her niece. She found Tamla outside on the ground, and it takes a few minutes to get Jean to answer the door, and she asks for Jose, who is the court officer boyfriend to Jean. So Jose comes downstairs to take a look at Tamla, and then they decide to call 911, which is about 15 minutes after they found her, or at least that they reported that they found her. And the police arrived just a few minutes later, and Madeline, like we said earlier, reported that Tamla had both of her arms straight down next to her sides. But the police reported she had her arm bent to the side like she tried to brace herself from the fall. Now, it's already been said by Jean that they suspected Tamla fell off of the balcony, but her unlit cigarette and her lighter can be found downstairs, so we don't know how Tamla fell from the top. The top balcony is actually located very close to Jean's room, and the balcony is said to be just over 14 feet tall, so that's pretty far for somebody to fall without making any noise or anybody even realizing. The officers seem like they came to the conclusion pretty quickly that Tamla just fell from being drunk and it was an accident. Tamla's husband said that when the police came to the house, they were not remorseful, and they actually came off extremely disrespectful.
Go downstairs, answer the door, and the cop says, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "And what's this pertaining to?" And he said, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "I'm going to ask you once again, what is this pertaining to?" He said, "Is your name Lee?" And I said, "Actually, no, it's not. It's Leander. But once again, what is this pertaining to?" And he said, "Well, your wife is deceased." So he said, "It's about your wife. She's deceased." That was his exact words. "It's about your wife. She's deceased." And I said, "What?" I said, no.
And Jose Barrera, Jean's partner, was actually fired from his position at the courthouse in December of 2018 because he was found looking up information about this case. This may seem very odd, but there's a couple of reasons why he may have looked up the information about Tamla's death. Maybe he was just curious, or maybe he had something to do with it. We don't know. Everybody that was at this party was interviewed, and some of the women stated some things that were very questionable, like Jean, for example.
Look, and I just went and got y'all gift cards.
Oh, well, they're gonna
Being
bring them
so
on. I told them I just made them cookies.
But then I was told I shouldn't because then it could look bad if I give you something before the case is closed.
Oh, well, you better wait.
So, And it's very stereotypical, because I figure all cops go to Dunkin' Donuts, right?
You may have something.
Jean had a nice house, and it's hard to believe that she had camera systems that just weren't working at the time. And her giving them gift cards and then basically asking to be done with the interview leads to some suspicion. Her tone of voice and the words that she used come off very cold. Her giving them gift cards, in my opinion, comes off kind of like bribery. I mean, I'm not sure why you would give them gift cards while you're being interviewed about somebody's death that took place in your backyard. And a lot of people stated that they believed that this had a lot to do with Tamla's race. They said if she were white, then they probably would have went about things differently with Tamla's case. We don't have many pictures from the scene or absolutely any pictures from the autopsy, which is completely unheard of because it's part of the autopsy to take photographs. The autopsy comes back and states that she died from the fall, and Tamla's cause of death was ruled blunt force trauma. Tamla's family wasn't happy with the way things were being handled with Tamla's case and her autopsy, so they had another private autopsy done for Tamla, which revealed a lot of injuries that the first autopsy didn't. And it was even stated that this crime scene was compromised from the start due to possible suspects touching Tamla's body. The private autopsy also reported that Tamla's death may have been a homicide. They did discover that Tamla had taken Xanax, but it wasn't fully metabolized in her system yet before she actually died. And when Leander went to see his wife Tamla as she was prepared for her funeral, it's described that she was in blackface, and she was basically made to look way darker than she actually was. This was very upsetting for Leander and his family, and sadly Tamla's case was closed just 3 months later in February of 2019, and it was ruled an accident. And this sparked a lot of outrage. Several celebrities actually spoke out about this case, including T.I. and 50 Cent, and people wanted this case reinvestigated. And it was said that this case was reopened in 2021, but unfortunately, the police didn't do enough investigating in this case until about 2 years later when they asked to search through the suspects' phones that were at this party, and several of them in which already had different phones at the time. So there was nothing for them to even look at. Tamla's case was ultimately closed again under the report that Tamla died from an accident. Nobody was ever arrested, and they were never treated as an actual suspect in this case. Tamla was actually expecting a grandchild, her first grandchild, and her and Leander were very excited about this. Tamla's life came to a tragic end on a night where she was supposed to be safe, and she was supposed to just wake up the next morning and go home to her family. And now, because of possible negligence and possible racial injustice, we may never know if Tamla's death was really an accident or if it was a homicide. This is a very heartbreaking case because Tamla is described as a wonderful mother and by all her friends, acquaintances, and her family. But maybe one day we will know what truly happened to Tamla. What do you think of this story? Do you believe that Tamla really tripped and fell to her death? Or do you think that this was a racially motivated attack on Tamla? Make sure you drop a comment below and let me know. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future videos. And hopefully I'll see you guys on the next disturbing video.